Radio Indiana. WIBC, Indianapolis.
He does have a shotgun wired to the subject's head.
You're about to hear a story about a kidnapping that happened 40 years ago.
Chief, all I've got in them bottles is gasoline. I just wanted to fry the son of a bitch. But I had a rig, pal. Don't you yourself none.
It's a rough story.
I'm not afraid to die. I'm not going to prison. I want what's mine.
Eat up off the plate like a damn dog that you are.
It's a violent story.
A middle-aged white male with short hair is holding what appears to be a shotgun at the back of another man.
He was a stickler to do things by the book.
You're going to hear it told accurately and authentically from the files of WIBC Radio.
He had a little sign over his door in his office that said, "Kill."
Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis crisis.
I've been wanting to shoot this son of a bitch since I made it. No, funny, there's been people out there.
I'm Chris Davis, news director for WIBC at 129 East Market Street in downtown Indianapolis. 40 years ago, a man named Tony Kiritsis believed that Meridian Mortgage and Dick Hall, the president of the company, worked him over in a business deal. So Kiritsis wired Hall's neck to a sawed-off, double-barreled shotgun. It was a device called a dead man's wire that would cause the shotgun to go off and shoot Hall in the head if either man tripped and fell or if the police shot Kiritsis. 40 years ago on this street, Kiritsis brought Dick Hall out of the building here on East Market, which was then Meridian Mortgage. The story you're listening to follows Kiritsis and Hall from downtown Indianapolis, where Kiritsis paraded his hostage through the streets in front of God and everyone, with the shotgun pointed to the back of Hall's head. Over to the Crestwood Apartments on Indy's west side, where police, the media, and Hall and Kiritsis negotiated for 63 hours. What happened during those 3 days changed police methods, media coverage, and lives. What you're about to hear is a true story. It's a violent story, and some of the language is rough. You'll hear the worst of it bleeped out, but you'll hear an accurate and authentic telling of the Kiritsis crisis from WIBC audio that has been stored since 1977. You'll also hear parts of a WIBC documentary from 1978 called 3 Days at Crestwood, and you'll hear new interviews with reporters Tom Cochran and Paul Page, former WISH TV news director Lee Giles, and for the first time in almost 40 years, new audio from hostage Dick Hall. Now to February 8th, 1977.
And Jim Lyons, in that office, explained rather what happened as it all began.
Someone came in this morning and asked to see Dick.
Personal vendetta or something?
Evidently, he made a bad real estate deal, and he's going to settle it. Did he come in with a shotgun? How did you know when we had it? I came in with Dick. He had 2 packages in his hand. This gentleman did. I was sitting there waiting for him. I asked to talk to him, went in his office, and I heard him start his bad language. He called the police immediately and told them he was going to settle this problem once for all, and went on.
He had a roll. He had some plans in his hand, along with his a white, like an Ayers box, and he also had his arm in a sling. And he had some red mercurochrome or something on his hand, and I think one of the first questions I asked him, I said, "Well, Tony, what happened to you?" Well, he says, "I was out pulling some stumps, and with a drag line, and it broke, and it hurt my arm." And obviously that was, I guess, in his sling he had a handgun, if I'm not mistaken.
Hall says Kiritsis used the handgun to control him while he wrapped the wire noose around Hall's neck with his shirt collar up. Kiritsis told him he didn't want to chafe him with the wire.
He used the handgun to control me until he rigged up the shotgun to my neck. He wired it to my neck, and then he carefully explained the dead man's trigger that he'd rigged on it.
Kiritsis called Indianapolis police to let them know what he was doing, and if they shot him or if either man tripped, that the gun would go off and kill Dick Hall.
Well, we left the office, and I've subsequently learned the elevator didn't work by design. I guess they shut the power off the elevator, so we had to walk down. We were on the 4th floor. We walked by a lady police officer who was in the hallway, And it was kind of interesting. We walked right by her. The hallway's not very, and she didn't do anything. It was then I started thinking that Kiritsis is pretty much in control.
Longtime Indy newsman Tom Cochran was a reporter for WIBC.
We heard scanner traffic on the police radios that something rather bold was going on downtown. As I recall, Doug O'Brien or Mark Watkins, one of our fellas, was on something in the downtown area, and he was diverted to pick it up.
Sharon Brown.
Everybody was told to get out of his way in the offices so that he could take the hostage out.
The subject is walking east on Market from Pennsylvania towards Delaware. He does have a shotgun wired to his subject's head.
American units downtown. The subject is now walking southbound on Pennsylvania from Market.
On the morning of February 8th, 1977, the banks downtown showed 9 degrees. Even though it was that cold, Tony Kiritsis marched Dick Hall out of his office after wiring his neck to the trigger device and keeping his finger on the trigger and the shotgun at the base of Hall's head. Marched him through the lobby of Meridian Mortgage, which was located at 129 East Market near the City County building, and then out the door.
We were able to report live watching Tony Kiritsis walk Dick Hall out of an office over sort of snow-covered, snow-encrusted sidewalks, shotgun at the back of his head.
Kiritsis marched his victim westward as astonished newsmen led by WIBC's Mark Watkins followed close behind.
As you and a police head off. Now get back. What's your name, you dumb mother? Get back.
On the north side of Washington Street, about halfway between Penn and Meridian, a middle-aged white male with short hair, wearing dark trousers and a green shirt, is holding what appears to be a shotgun at the back of another man.
Indianapolis police officer Ray Brunk.
He was up on the 4th floor, I believe it was, and he had this gun in the guy's head, and he come down the front stairway on Market Street side, and we were standing there, and he come out of the door, and he handed me the little thing. He says, "Here's a safety out of gun if you think I'm bluffing." And we went downstairs. He went on Market Street, and we got in front of him so we'd get the people off the street. And he went on down Market to Pennsylvania and south on Pennsylvania to Washington Street and west on Washington Street.
Coming up, you'll hear why Tony Kiritsis believed he was justified in kidnapping Dick Hall and parading him through downtown Indianapolis, and where the journey took both men next. You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
He still has a shotgun wired to the neck of his victim, and his hand is wired, according to one man who walked much of the distance in the downtown area with him. His hand is tied in such a way that would he be shot, the fall of his body would pull the trigger on the shotgun and kill the hostage.
I'm 93 WIBC News Director Chris Davis. In 1972, Tony Kiritsis didn't have any money, but he had some land on the west side of Indianapolis. He asked for a loan from Meridian Mortgage so that he could own the land outright and have the title. Kiritsis claimed he wanted to develop the land, and Dick Hall's father, Millard, who was still in charge of the company at the time, agreed to a 2-year mortgage. It was extended after those 2 years were up. But that wasn't the only time. 93 WIBC's C.J. Miller.
You know that if you get a loan, you have to pay it back, which Kiritsis did not. Instead, he got an extension and another extension. When Meridian Mortgage found out that Kiritsis had some good offers from Marsh grocery stores and some other businesses to buy the land, they encouraged him to sell, says Dick Hall. Kiritsis refused, even though he could have paid his mortgage off and made more than $300,000. Hall says during one meeting at the company offices in 1976, Kiritsis became violently angry, and Millard Hall grabbed him by the bicep and forced him out of the office. When Kiritsis took Dick Hall hostage, he was less than 1 month from defaulting on the mortgage. Kiritsis believed Meridian Mortgage could have done a better job helping him develop the land, and he believed they wanted to own it and develop it themselves. Hall denies that claim in his new book, Kiritsis and Me. He says they only wanted to get their money back. Well, that's the Kiritsis claim, and he conjured up plenty of drama to bring attention to it.
What I saw was Mr. Kiritsis, and I didn't know his name at that time, with a shotgun in his hand, and it appeared to be taped or wired to the neck of Mr. Hall.
At around 9:30 a.m., February the 8th, 1977, around 10 degrees outside, with ice and snow on the sidewalks in downtown Indianapolis, he marched Hall out of the front of 129 East Market Street, shotgun wired to his neck, and the barrel pointed to the back of his head.
I'd never seen anything like that. Indeed, all of the spectators, and there were several hundred on Washington Street at the time, had never seen anything like it. We watched while Mr. Kiritsis argued with police and then made his way on down Washington Street towards Senate, where there was a police car waiting for him.
Kiritsis, we have confirmed this now, just now. Kiritsis had told the policeman this morning, when he was apparently downtown, that he didn't want to hurt police officers. He only wanted to hurt the mortgage company officials involved. This is, as Doug's note to me here says, this is Plan B. Plan A was to kill 4 officials. He says he had been planning this for 4 years, according to my information here. Hall's wife is now in a hospital after surgery. The nature of that we don't know, but this we have been able to confirm just now by way of a message handed to me from Doug O'Brien.
Then reporter Paul Page.
I was actually picking some buddies of mine, agents at the FBI, up at their old office on Pennsylvania Street, go to lunch. And I had the WIBC mobile unit. And no sooner did we get together than the call comes out, and it's 9 blocks away from us, and so they all run back into the building. They've got to get their cars and go in. And of course, I'm down there, but it moved pretty quickly.
Kiritsis continued a yelling and cursing rant as he pushed Hall south on Pennsylvania, west on Washington, and to Senate near the Indiana State House, where a police car had been left running with the door open.
Standing here at the corner of Illinois and Washington. In the background, you can hear the voice of the suspect threatening the police to leave him alone. He has a shotgun, appears to be a shot-off shotgun, wired to the neck of a man who's been identified to us tentatively by a co-employee as Dick Hall. The man is threatening to shoot his victim unless police stay back from him a certain distance. The suspect is getting into a police car. The driver's side, the car's been left for him at the intersection of Senate and Washington. He's getting into the car. He's pulling the suspect in behind him now. He has moved over to the passenger side. The victim is sitting in the driver's seat as the suspect yells instructions. Now the victim is beginning to back away. The gun is still rigged. The gun is still rigged. Now they're pulling away. Red lights flashing as the victim drives the car to 132. An IPD police car pulls away from Senate and Washington Street with a hostage kidnap situation.
Paul Page.
And, of course, law enforcement is blocking things, and he finally makes it out to the place on Rockville Road, and we kind of a whole trail of law enforcement and reporters headed out there.
So it was kind of like a caravan going
Almost, yeah.
No one knew the destination at that point, but the police car was not left for Kiritsis intentionally. Kiritsis told Hall that he wanted to take him in Kiritsis' car, but he had broken the key off in the ignition while it was parked in a nearby lot.
He jumped into that car, dragging the victim with him. The victim drove, Mr. Hall drove out here to the Crestwood Apartments at 250 North Girls School Road on the far west side. He was thought for a time he may be headed for the airport, and all kinds of things started going through people's minds. However, he headed here toward the apartment.
Reporter Tom Cochran was dispatched by WIBC News Director Fred Heckman.
I was sent by Fred to get out there and get what I could and start reporting as quickly as we could. We arrived to a scene where there was already some police phalanx put in place. It was still a little bit of a chaotic scene. No police lines were drawn. There was no real command point yet. But they realized that Kiritsis had taken Dick Hall upstairs to an upstairs apartment in a particular building.
At the State House, the gunman grabbed another police officer, took the keys to his squad car, and forced Hall to get in and drive.
You're hearing Fred Heckman, then WIBC News Director.
The pair then drove off west on US 40 with a squad squad cars, red lights flashing, several police cars following.
Fred was very well known to Tony because WIBC was the leading news voice in the community, and everybody knew Fred Heckman.
Heckman had respect as the main news voice in Indianapolis, and he had the respect of Tony Kiritsis.
Station credibility was extraordinarily high, and so it was natural that Tony would understand who Fred was and could, in fact, and did later, reach out to Fred.
That may have been one of the main factors in what would happen to Dick Hall.
Among other reporters, Paul Page, spending what is becoming a very long day now at Crestwood Village.
He still has a shotgun wired to the neck of his victim, and his hand is wired, according to one man who walked much of the distance in the downtown area with him. His hand is tied in such a way that would he be shot, the fall of his body would pull the trigger on the shotgun and kill the hostage. It is because of that kind of pre-thinking that the posture here is one of great care. They don't want to move too quick. They certainly don't.
We understand now that this could go for quite some time. Kiritsis reportedly has 4 days' supply of food in his apartment. Now, we don't know if that means for just himself or for both he and his hostage.
We found a lady who happened to be a very loyal WIBC fan. She sought us out, and she called us boys. She said, "Boys, if you would like to use my apartment, you just take it over. I'm going to go stay with a friend." Well, as it turned out, she had an apartment that had a very good view of all of the action that was underway. There was a telephone which gave us immediately open line communication to the radio station, and for the better part of the next day and a half, 2 days, that is where WIBC set up its sort of remote location. Bless her heart, she had coffee and a coffee maker, and so we were able to have coffee because most of us were there for the better part of 24 hours a day for 2 days.
You were just across?
Probably from the apartment he was in, 100 yards. Because those buildings are all X-shaped, and they're kind of all placed in together. There wasn't anything to see, though. I mean, he had it all closed off, and mostly what we would get is occasional reports from whatever access law enforcement was using to try and determine what was there, and we'd get, somebody outside the door goes and listens.
That apartment is identified as being rigged with nitroglycerin. There are reports that there are wires attached to the door, wires attached to the windows. That threat is being taken very, very seriously. The man apparently does have a pass. He is fully capable of that type of demolition work.
Coming up, you'll hear why police didn't dare try to take Kiritsis down while he and Dick Hall were in the apartment together, and what happened when Kiritsis reached out to WIBC.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis, on 93 WIBC.
Does have a shotgun wired to the subject's head.
Is that the guy in the green shirt? Yeah. Do they know each other? What does Dick Hall do?
He's the president of the Hall Huddle Company. I'll bring in live.
Meridian Mortgage.
Stand by.
February 8th, 1977, the west side of Indianapolis, the kidnapping of Dick Hall, president of Hall Huddle Company, which owned Meridian Mortgage, by Tony Kiritsis, a man who had a mortgage with the company and who had a beef with the company, too. WIBC reporter Tom Cochran was at the Crestwood Village Apartments, where Kiritsis had taken Hall.
Kiritsis had taken Dick Hall upstairs to an upstairs apartment in a particular building.
Now you can put yourself in Dick Hall's shoes. You're at the dinner table in the apartment of the man who took you hostage. He's got you handcuffed and too tight, and your neck is wired to the trigger of a sawed-off shotgun. The kidnapper is sitting right across from you, and the gun is propped up on 2 thick phone books pointed at your face. He says the place is booby-trapped, that explosives could blow you both to kingdom come if anyone makes the wrong move.
We sat down at a dining room table on the corner of it, and he shifted the shotgun around facing me. And we sat in chairs across the corner of the dining room table, and we spent a considerable amount of time. He did have 2 telephone books that he put the shotgun on. And I remember very clearly that he said, "Look at that hand, Dick," and he concentrated on how steady his hand was. He said, "You know, if it had been you'd been a dead man if it wasn't." He really was proud of his control of that hand.
So you wait. And wait.
I remember spending a great deal of time at the table. It was about that time that he said, "Dick," he said, we're gonna have a little trial here, and I'm going to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner."
You're hearing Dick Hall talk about time in the apartment and his time with Tony Kiritsis for the first time publicly in almost 40 years. 93 WIBC's Mary Ferrucci.
Kiritsis decided to take the dead man's wire off of Hall's neck, which was bleeding and sore. He made him keep the cuffs on his hands in front of him and forced him to lay on the floor of the bathroom. He closed the door, but Hall was still connected to Kiritsis with a heavy chain that made a lot of noise. Kiritsis told him that the bathroom door was booby-trapped and that if he tried to get out, the place would blow up.
The only conversation I had was through the door, and I was explaining about the wiring on the apartment. It's interesting, when I was in the bathroom, I thought about sending a message to the police with Morse code. I'm familiar with Morse code. I learned it as a ham operator in the service. And then I wasn't exactly sure what kind of message I was going to send at the time, but I was trying to communicate with the police.
And Tony Kiritsis was a man of emotional extremes. Sometimes he could be downright cruel.
He slid a plate underneath the door, and he said, "Here, I'm going to give you some food. Eat up off the plate like a damn dog that you are." And then he ranted about what kind of a dog I was. It was kind of humiliating, I suppose.
And other times, sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek.
He did offer me some cookies, and I said, "No thanks, Tony, I don't eat cookies." And he says, "Why not?" And I said, "I don't want to gain weight." He said that, "Dick, we can get you an extra pallbearer."
While that was happening inside, WIBC and the TV stations were reporting on what they were seeing.
WIBC's news department on that particular day in 1977, we had a larger staff than one of the television stations in town, and we probably were equal to another one of the television stations.
Tom Cochran.
In those days, live television interrupt was not done with the frequency that it is now in a 24/7 world. We were the sort of go-to, if you will, source for continuing coverage because we had people covering this around the clock for the full some 70 hours, and we were on the air during most of each hour of the broadcast day with some coverage or summaries when we were not on live from the scene. During critical moments in the episode, we were on live.
WIBC News is Fred Heckman, Mark Watkins, Lou Palmer, Bob Hoover, Tom Cochran, Kevin O'Neill, Lee Daniels, Doug O'Brien, Paul Page. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The largest radio news organization in Indiana is working for you. WIBC News.
Here from the WIBC newsroom, a status report on hostage held, Indianapolis through the day. And for 44-year-old Anthony Kiritsis, it has been a very long day. But for 42-year-old mortgage man Dick Hall, it probably has been even longer. He, Hall, is the hostage held by Kiritsis and has been since before 9 this morning.
The Indiana State Police helicopter that was here, that's behind Sergeant Love, is now en route to pick up Kiritsis' brother, the man that he had demanded to talk to earlier on in the negotiation. The brother lives out of town someplace. We haven't been able to establish where, but we do understand that the state police helicopter is en route to pick him up at this time.
Lee Daniels, who's just interviewed Sheriff Larry Broderick.
Sheriff, I understand that you are going to do some evacuating here in the complex other than the building where the man is. Can you explain to us what and why?
Well, we have been told that there's a great deal of explosive in the apartment. We're going to suggest to the people who are facing this apartment that they move out just in case of broken glass and so forth.
Sergeant, you've had trouble with this man before. Can you tell us what happened then?
Well,
He got rather despondent several years ago and was allegedly barricaded into his house and would kill anybody that approached him, and I went in and talked him out of it.
Have you been up there to talk to him today?
Yes.
What did he say to you today?
He indicated he wanted me to get hold of his older brother, and he and his older brother and myself talked to him.
What does he want? Does he make a demand?
He didn't say anything to me at this time. He wants to talk to his brother awfully bad.
What was he despondent about the last time?
The last time? He felt like he's being harassed by some county officials concerning some zoning regulations, this type of thing.
Have you had any other trouble with him?
Well, I've known him all my life. I've had trouble with him all my life, more or less.
What kind of trouble?
Oh, nothing. I just be a little candid there. I arrested him one time for assault and battery with intent. He took a couple of shots at his brothers.
You grew up with him?
Oh, I've known him all my life, yes.
Where did you grow up, and what was he like then?
We was on the west side of Indianapolis, rather warm-tempered, I guess you'd say.
Did he tell you now whether or not he's still got the gun on this man? Has he still got it wired to his neck?
Yes.
Kiritsis was listening to WIBC and heard that and everything else that was being said about him.
And so we were not only reporting to the wider public, but we were, in essence, reporting to Tony.
WIBC reporter Tom Cochran.
And so that was a gamble that we took. We realized there could have been a lethal component to that.
WIBC reporter Paul Page.
I think I only slept once. Now I'm on a phone line giving reports back to the station on every new little thing that happened. Of course, for the WIBC News, that was a very big deal. I had a good source of information because I'm hearing what they're talking about, and they're fine with me reporting it.
By the end of the first day, the negotiators thought they were making some progress.
As part of the negotiations, there was a statement from Meridian Mortgage and Hall Hoddle, the parent company. It was prepared by the company's lawyer, and later on, the company said that everything in the statement saying they had done Kiritsis wrong was indeed false.
In accordance with the gunman's demands, Hall Hoddle broadcast a public apology over WRTV-TV Indianapolis. And later, WIBC.
The organ and our national anthem has been played. The racers defending the goal to our right. That'll be Jim Park.
This is a public apology to Anthony Kiritsis for all wrongs Meridian Mortgage or Hall Hoddle or its officers have committed in respect to Mr. Kiritsis. Our company had with Eisner R. Marsh in regards to locating on Mr. Kiritsis' property, or steering them to other properties is acknowledged.
Was there much reaction when the company made the public apology on Channel 6 and WIBC? There was not a lot of reaction. A lot of people were in wonderment as to why. This explained to us that was at the request of Tony, that it was the first of the 4 demands to be answered.
Coming up, why what Kiritsis heard on the radio may have made it more dangerous for Dick Hall and why one newsman had to give up the story.
I'm trying to save me and save him because when he dies, I die.
I want to save the both of you.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis crisis on 93 WIBC.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis crisis on 93 WIBC.
Went into his own apartment, barricaded himself in there, informed police that he had it wired with nitroglycerin.
February 8th, 1977.
A SWAT team arrived on the scene and deployed. They are still deployed. In fact, here all we do is wait for something to happen. The SWAT team is on the roof. They are in third-floor apartments. They're on the ground waiting for some break.
Tony Kiritsis had Dick Hall in his apartment, and Indianapolis Police and the Marion County Sheriff's Department had established their command post in another apartment.
To my right stand 4 khaki-colored, fatigue-clothed members of the 64th Ordnance Detachment from Fort Harrison, a bomb squad. Should the room be dynamited, as they suspect. In fact, now they've all but confirmed that because they checked the location in which he had stored dynamite in the past. They found the dynamite missing. They found the stock of the shotgun that had been sawed off still in the vise in this barn. So they suspect he's not kidding. He is certainly capable of those kind of explosives in that building.
An FBI negotiator named Patrick Mullaney came from the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia.
I'd never seen that process. I know a lot about it now. But again, it was new to all of us. And the negotiator was like magic. He was telling us things. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. Really? How do you know? but he did.
WIBC reporter Paul Page was in an apartment provided by a loyal listener while indie TV stations and networks set up shop at Crestwood Village in one of the nation's first media camps.
Did you feel like that the FBI and police were playing it his way?
No, they were playing it very definitely their way. The negotiator, like I said, predicted the timing, the placement. The FBI had snipers on the roof of the building. They're constantly reporting what they're seeing, what they're doing, which wasn't much.
It is much a very routine scene. You see nothing out of the ordinary. There's nothing to indicate there's any trouble. In fact, as you stand and look out the door, it's almost like late night in any apartment complex.
At one point, under a great veil of secrecy, the Air Force came in with some bomb-sniffing dogs. It was secret because using the military against the civilian posse comitatus was an issue, and they didn't want anybody to know they did it.
Paul Page says he was asked to be a go-between between the FBI and Kiritsis.
The bureau negotiator who was out of Washington, D.C. said, we need some other external contact with him. Would you do that for us? I said, I can't. I'm a journalist. I can't do that. Didn't give it a second thought. And that's when I went and got some rest. And when the radio woke me up the next morning, I hear Kiritsis live on our air with his rants and his ravings.
Anyhow, Mr. Heckman, let's say they set you up and they messed you around and you worked like a dog and you fought it and tried to thwart them and you couldn't do it. And eventually they kind of laughed at you and they said, we're going to take your car and we're going to take your house and we're going to take your wife and we're going to take your children, and then they're going to laugh at you. Would you be ready to kill Heckman?
Be awfully mad, sir.
Would you be ready to kill Heckman?
I don't know what I'd be ready to kill, but I'd...
Don't lie. Why do you lie?
What happened? I guess Fred Heckman, the news director at the time, decided he could be the contact for that. He's news director. He can make that kind of decision. But to hear that language, I'm waking up out of a pretty deep sleep. And
I'd like to think in my own mind that you'll say, honey, can you imagine how much it took to push Tony Kiritsis this far? It's been a bitch, Fred.
I think that's probably historical. I don't think that kind of stuff had ever been on a radio prior to that.
The morning of February 9th, Tony Kiritsis' phone calls to WIBC news director Fred Heckman were on the air, largely unedited. The reason? Editing the tape to bleep out the curse words would take time, and getting the taped phone calls on the air fast could help spare Dick Hall's life. You will now hear some of what Kiritsis wanted on the WIBC airwaves.
He has a lot he wants to say, and I put this on tape recording. We told him that this would be for recording and for the air. He said, you better put your time delay on that. He says, because I use some rather strong language. And Mr. Kiritsis does use some strong language in here. We will try to bleep it out if we can. There is no time delay that I have on that particular unit as it was being recorded. I will try to bleep it out. If there are those of you who may be offended by some rather strong language, I would advise you to tune out. But Mr. Kiritsis spent about 15 minutes with me on the telephone telling what he considered were the problems out there, and we run that story as we had it from unedited from Mr. Kiritsis now.
Please forgive me for the language that I use. I've been an angry man for 44 years. Nobody has had the adversity that I've had. But in spite of that, and without arrogance and without putting my friends down, or the general population down, and without being egotistical, I am the strongest man mentally that I know. The soundest man that I've ever met. And you can ask a lot of people that I know whether that's true or not. The average guy that would have gone through this would have already had a heart attack and or a stroke. These guys are lucky they're dealing with me, because some nervous Norman would have already shot him. Now, I'll tell you what these people tried to do, sir. It's almost indescribable. To the average man, he will be unable to comprehend it. You may not. But people in this business know. These people betrayed, they set me up, they schemed to ruin a life, a human life, my life. You've got 100 armed officers around here trying to get a shot at me. They had a couple hundred down on the street yesterday morning. I dared them to shoot me. I didn't go down there to be a buffoon. I went down there for vengeance. And by God, I'll have vengeance.
Just a few moments ago, we interviewed Jimmy Kiritsis, one of the brothers of Tony.
Stayed in the apartment all night across the hall from him, and he woke up twice or called me twice. I don't know whether he was asleep or not. And we just talked in generalities and hope for a better day today.
Do you know if he heard the broadcast of the interview that he did with Fred Heckman on WIBC?
I haven't talked to him since the broadcast. I wasn't even aware of it until just now. There has been so many reporting irregularities that they must have been interviewing a janitor's on me, I figure, because there's no way that he demanded $5 million for his hostage. There's no way that he held my sister for $50,000 ransom for, that's a bunch of bullcrap. And if anyone wants the facts, they can come and ask me. I'm his brother, and I love him. He's just a fine, compassionate human being, and like I told the news this morning, he's just a businessman fighting for his damn life.
That is Jimmy Kiritsis, 44-year-old brother of Tony. This is Mark Watkins, WIBC News.
WIBC News Director Fred Heckman was encouraged by the FBI negotiator to keep talking with Kiritsis.
But nobody is going to set me up and take everything that I own. I've made a lot of sacrifices in my time. I'm a 44-year-old man. I've never been drunk. I've never been married. I've never been engaged. I've never gone steady. I forsook marriage because I had a lot of responsibility. These people, they played God and lost. You don't have to be smart to play God. You have to be cheap.
Tom Cochran.
WIBC News has always sort of been the standard setter in central Indiana, and I think that it probably dates back to when Fred was that tough, irascible SOB who we loved and who we loved to work for.
Lee Giles, news director then at WISH Wish TV.
I think Fred, in this Kiritsis situation, was in a very, very difficult position because Mr. Kiritsis, did call Fred and tell him what he had done and what he was doing in the apartment as this went along, and Fred did, as you suggest, become an intermediary in this. As a news person, you really don't want to be involved. You do not want to be in the middle of the story. Our job is to cover it, not to participate in it. But in this case, the police, the authorities asked Fred to continue that, to listen to Tony, to talk to him, to suggest that, hey, this can be resolved peacefully and that type of thing. And Fred did a wonderful job at that.
Now WIBC had become part of the story, and so had Fred Heckman.
I probably die up here. This is probably a terminal thing. I know what's going on, Fred. When I got on this road, I knew it was long, narrow, one-way, dead-end road. I'm going to tell you, Mr. Heckman, when I picked up that sawed-off shotgun yesterday morning, the feeling that I had, if I talked to you for 100 years, I couldn't convey the feeling.
I love all people. I always did like people. I've been a damn patsy all my life. I told this after all they've done, that I still couldn't hate him, but I could sure as hell kill him. I'm the most stable man that any of these people ever met. I heard on the television that I was hot-tempered. If anybody had been jacked the way I have, they'd have a temper. You damn right, I don't apologize for my temper.
I appreciate the fair manner in which you people are handling this thing. I'm not looking and have never looked for notoriety, Mr. Heckman. I don't need it. I can assure you I don't.
Coming up, did the phone calls to WIBC help the situation? What happened in the afternoon that may have made an already volatile man boil over? You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
No, I don't want to go to prison, Mr. Heckman. I'm not going to go to prison.
February 9th, 1977. Day 2 at Crestwood Village Apartments. Tony Kiritsis and Dick Hall had spent the night in Kiritsis' third-floor apartment.
From the minute in the office that I saw his rage and the wild look in his eyes and the guns, I figured I was dead. I figured everything that from here on is just gravy. I'm not sure that I ever thought myself that I was going to get out of there alive.
Was there any point where you thought it might end badly?
That's a good question. I don't think I thought of it in those terms. I thought of it in an immediacy and what I was doing to cover the story.
Part of an interview with WIBC reporter Paul Page.
But now that you ask it, maybe I assumed a successful ending to it. a peaceful ending to it.
We just talked a moment ago with a man who claims to be a friend of Tony's and who says he just talked to him just a few moments ago. What's your name, sir?
Joe Linney.
Did you call Tony or what?
Yeah.
You called him up on the phone?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I was pretty concerned about it.
What did he tell you on the phone?
Well, he just said talk pretty favorable, that's all.
Did he seem confident about being able to resolve the situation?
Yeah.
Did he specify at all?
No.
There's a lot of time for speculation, and it is interesting, perhaps, to develop some of the mood, the psychological ambience of this. There are a lot of people who are saying now that Tony probably has a legitimate gripe. Now, this is speculation on the part of people who are not only media types, but also law enforcement officials, that he has a legitimate gripe. And
I have heard this from calls that we have received here, yes.
So there's that feeling. I mean, that feeling is building here, but still there is this matter of law, and perhaps violation of the law by his own actions.
For example, back on September 19th, 1975, the Indianapolis News ran a story, and I quote it, "A mortgage company under attack by the Coalition to End Neighborhood Deterioration issued figures yesterday that it says show the company does not practice fast foreclosure of government-insured loans. The president of SEND, Ann Hanlon, has accused Meridian Mortgage Company, Dick Hall's company, the hostage, at 129 East Market, of making excess profits by quickly foreclosing on homeowners who had purchased their homes through the Federal Housing Administration loan program."
There were other stories in the media accusing Meridian Mortgage of wrongdoing. Dick Hall denies that the company did anybody wrong in his new book, Kiritsis and Me. WIBC's Stan Lear.
Now Hall was listening as Kiritsis and WIBC News Director Fred Heckman talked.
I was right there with him. I think we were sitting at the table when he did it, and he reported. Kiritsis kept me advised of what Heckman's position was.
And Heckman played back the tapes during the Morning Drive newscast on WIBC. Heckman was now a part of the story, and the FBI wanted him on the scene to help with negotiations. Heckman would have to take himself off the story. WIBC reporter Tom Cochran.
We realized that we had our lead anchor, because he was the one who was anchoring most of the coverage. He was getting assistance from Lou Palmer. And the fellow who was directing our coverage was also directly involved in sort of the backroom negotiations and effect to control Tony's behavior. We found that a conflict. Raised it with Fred, and after some discussion, Fred understood our point of view. He was a stickler to do things by the book, did not necessarily want to take himself out of the coverage loop, but when we pushed hard enough, he realized that was the right decision. He wasn't going to compromise probably the promise he had made to keep certain communications confidential, but not to be able to share what he knew, also compromised his ability to function as a journalist with full disclosure, and so he listened and basically took himself off.
Fred Heckman, WIBC News Director from 1957 to 1993.
Fred was a one-of-a-kind. He was an irascible guy, a very lovable fella, but he could be one tough SOB. He had a little sign over his door in his office that said, "Kill." And that meant to those of us who were going out every day that he wanted us to be the best at what we were hired to do as reporters in Indianapolis. He was absolutely driven to get the story, to get it first, and to get it right, and to make sure that people realized if they wanted to get the information, they would come to us.
Wish TV News Director Lee Giles.
Fred, I think, was one of the best news persons in the city of Indianapolis that this town has ever had. We were not the kind of friends that would see each other every day, but I admired his work so much. I would listen. I was like a radio news fan of WIBC News, and I would listen to Fred's broadcasts in the morning, every morning, at home, in addition to watching our television broadcasts. But on my way to work in the car, I'd listen to Fred's newscasts, and kept us up to date. Terrific.
WIBC reporter Paul Page.
He's really, to me, a pillar in journalism. Now, he had a lot of facets to him. He was Second World War Navy. very much into the community. Had a little program a little segment that he put on called My Town Indy, in which he searched. He'd drive us nuts. You know, I need a little fact. I need a little something to build the city up.
And the negotiations continued through the day. Kiritsis wanted $5 million and to walk out a free man. He didn't want an arrest, a mugshot, or a mental exam, and he wanted what he considered an accurate and adequate admission that Meridian Mortgage had worked him over.
They made that statement last night, completely and totally inadequate. They're going to say we had to do this because he had our son with a gun on his head.
The 5:30 crisis.
Doug O'Brien reported about how the SWAT team might work. It was all theoretical.
The Army bomb squad that's here has begun to try and think of ways to somehow get in without setting off the explosives. If Kiritsis could be incapacitated somehow, they could get in and defuse the explosives that are in the room, if they are in fact there, and they do believe they are.
Okay.
They could get in without setting them off if Kiritsis were incapacitated.
Okay, but it hasn't really come to that, and we'll anxiously await the next report then from the scene.
Tony, in his fatigue, hears that, starts screaming and yelling, telling his family who's on the other side of the door to get out. He's going to do it. This is it.
Just broadcast something on your radio station. Now they're trying to lie about it, Fred, and I don't like it. Don't tell me what I heard.
Wait a second.
Damn well what I heard.
Tony,
I heard it, and they said it, and now they're trying to act like I was hearing things.
Tony?
I don't like it.
Tony, I just got.
Just called you and had you call me.
Hey, wait, I'm home, Tony. I don't know.
Just called you and had you call me, right?
I heard you.
Okay, you heard what I heard, right?
No, I didn't, Tony. I was silent.
Good liar, Fred.
Hey, you know I don't lie to you now. You know I don't lie to you. I haven't lied to you yet.
Coming up, Kiritsis has to make something happen as the FBI negotiator and the prosecutor work to come to terms with a very angry man. You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis, on 93 WIBC.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis, on 93 WIBC.
They make me so angry, I was afraid that they were going to force me to do what I don't really want to do anyway. I'm trying to save me and save him, because when he dies, I die.
I want to save the both of you.
At 5:30 p.m., February 9th, 1977, the situation was almost not salvageable. Hostage taker and kidnapper Tony Kiritsis heard a theoretical report on WIBC about the possibility of the bomb squad coming in while Kiritsis was incapacitated to save Dick Hall's life.
At the time, everybody thought he had the place wired with explosives. That was not true. We didn't know that until later.
Tom Cochran.
We knew that Dick Hall was at the end of a shotgun, but he's yelling he's going to do it, and the family and the couple of people from the command post came to our room where we were broadcasting and saying, hey, you got to stop this. He thinks the bomb squad's going to move. We huddled very quickly. We went back on the air and said, we want to make it clear this was a theoretical. We thought Doug had made that clear, but apparently Tony had misheard it. It is not going to happen.
That wasn't good enough. At 6 o'clock, WIBC's Paul Page went on the air with a gunman's brother, Jimmy Kiritsis.
And Tony, if you're listening, it's God's truth on my mother's grave. There is a bomb squad here just for, like the gentleman wanted to talk to you. They're here in the coffee room playing cards. There is nobody in that apartment now except you and Mr. Hall. Everybody else is gone. And we'll be in telephone contact with you.
Sorry I was so angry, but I was angry. I think you remember that. Those people were jacked with me. They were trying to get a shot at me, whatever they were doing. I didn't like it. I get tired of hearing on the radio and various media that they're going to save Mr. Hall, and they never say a damn thing about me.
It was the obvious fluctuation between rage and calm that concerned the FBI behavior specialist the most. And that's where WIBC News Director Fred Heckman was called directly into service.
39228. Better act now. It's 26 past 8 at WIBC. Kevin, you have an update on something in the newsroom for us?
Yes, Gary. On the phone right now, we have our crew who is out at the scene on the west side.
Kevin, as we had indicated at 8 o'clock, there has been a rather dramatic change in the tone of the situation out here. We find out now in substance that perhaps the negotiations are reaching a very new stage. Our own news director, Fred Heckman, who is now no longer on the story as a journalist, he is involved in the story now as perhaps one of the principal negotiators. Fred just arrived here at Building 7, where we have been operating from. And, Mark, you had a chance to speak with Fred more recently than I did.
Yeah, we did. As a matter of fact, we just talked to him a couple of moments ago before he went into the command post behind closed doors.
Can you tell us anything, Fred? The only thing I can say, I got a call from the FBI, a friend of mine here in the FBI, and he asked me would I come out here. That's all he told me. He said, would you come out here as soon as you can? So I said I would. Put Kevin on the 8 o'clock news, and you fellas did a good report. And here I am waiting to meet with my contact.
Is it possible, Fred, that you will be asked to participate in whatever arrangements may be made to conclude this matter?
It is possible, Mark. I have no idea. He would not say anything on the phone.
In your own mind, having talked to Tony this morning on 2 occasions now, do you feel that Tony is receptive to you? Are you satisfied that he would be willing to trust you?
Tony said on several occasions he believes I've treated him honestly, treated him fairly, and that. But beyond that, as far as negotiating, I honestly don't know.
So, Kevin, it may well be that Fred has become perhaps involved in negotiations.
I'm Eric Berman. The negotiations included immunity for Tony Kiritsis, who had Dick Hall wired to a shotgun that would go off, killing Hall if either one of them dropped. On day 3, it appeared Kiritsis was ready to take the deal. He would be free, and he would be rich. And he would have the satisfaction of Dick Hall and Meridian Mortgage admitting they worked him over in the 5-year-long land deal.
We understand that perhaps there are new developments in the negotiations between Mr. Kiritsis and those people who are working to free his hostage, Dick Hall. In fact, Dave Rimstad of the Marion County Prosecutor's Office held a very hurried news conference just minutes ago in the lobby of this building.
I think Mr. March from our office has already discussed the terms that we can release at this time. The document is really a matter between Tony and the prosecutor's office. It can be amended, I can tell you that. Basically, the only condition that we are holding out for is the safe release of Mr. Hall.
The Marion County Prosecutor, James F. Kelly, does hereby confer and grant to Anthony George Kiritsis immunity from prosecution with reference to the abduction of Richard Hall and all subsequent acts done or alleged to have been done on February 8 and February 9, 1977. This grant of immunity shall include immunity from arrest, which means he will not be booked or required to receive psychiatric care. The Marion County Prosecutor confers this grant of immunity to Anthony George Kiritsis with the understanding that he will release Richard Hall unharmed and free all other persons from the threat of bodily harm or by explosion or other dangerous means.
The negotiations continued throughout the afternoon and evening, and suddenly, Kiritsis was down the staircase and on the move across the mall to the building housing police and newsmen. There was supposed to have been a news conference at a certain spot in the lobby. Lights and microphones had been set up for it. But when Kiritsis walked in with Dick Hall still wired to that shotgun, the cameras turned to cover him. And it was then that the famous news conference took place.
Mr. Gallagher. Chief, right here. Chief, all up 10 bottles of gasoline. I just wanted to fry the son of a bitch. But I had a rig, pal. Don't you shit yourself none. I believe you. Okay, read it.
February 10, 1977. This statement is being made to try and state the items that Mr. Kiritsis alluded to as being the illegal.
Hold it. I want this damn thing understood. I'll read it. February 10th, 1977. I'm going to glass of water. This statement is being made to try and state the items.
On that night of the final episode, television stations were trying to cover it live, but when he started swearing, even though the absurdity of the scene of a man having a shotgun at the back of his head in front of live cameras would give some people pause as to whether or not to put that on live because it's an uncontrollable situation, it was the language that caused some television stations to drop out of live coverage and then to rejoin it.
WIBC reporter Tom Cochran.
And that happened in Indianapolis and apparently some other stations that were there live, maybe even providing network coverage.
Suddenly, the news conference ended, and with Fred Heckman at his side, Kiritsis backed his hostage down a hallway to the police command post room where an hour later, Kiritsis decided to accept the terms offered him.
WIBC reporter Doug O'Brien.
After a time, there was a gunshot, and everyone who heard it assumed the worst.
I've been wanting to shoot this son of a bitch since I made it. Nope. Tony, there's been people out there.
People out there.
It was, however, merely Kiritsis clearing his shotgun after releasing his hostage. Kiritsis had opened a sliding glass door and fired into the air. Amazingly, there were 2 SWAT team members outside at the ready when he did, and they did not fire. Police Chief Eugene Gallagher told us,
I think admirable restraint was shown.
Sheriff Larry Broderick remembered,
when he started for that window, I knew those people were out there, and we were scared to death that something would happen, but the 2 men out there, and Chief, you should be good to them because they really were, they did a job. They didn't move. As soon as he shot the gun, he brought it in, laid it down, and took all the shells out of it, and that's all there was to it.
But Kiritsis wasn't quite through.
I tell you what I'd like. I tell you what I'd like to do right now, really. Just if Mr. Heckman would like to stay, he can stay. I want to thank all you guys. You don't know how much, and just leave me and Dick here because I don't. I'm sorry what I've done.
Sorry.
Yeah. Tony.
Come on, stay with your friend, Tony.
You guys get out of here so this man can be alone. Hell, we've had enough. Get out. I never. Can we sit with you, Tony? As long as we don't have any fun, because hell, he's not having any fun. I'll guarantee you.
He probably likes to come.
And he had words for Dick Hall at the end of the situation.
Dick, what'd I tell you? I stuck one of these in your ear for 3 days, and you had one in mine for 4.5 years.
And WIBC's Fred Heckman.
It's been a son of a bitch, Freddie. I can't believe it, and just like I said, I'll flat guarantee you, without your support, the man, I'd have been a doomed man.
At that point, Kiritsis was arrested and led away. Doug O'Brien, WIBC News.
Tony was arrested because, according to Eugene Gallagher, you blew it, Tony. You lied. You blew it. What he was referring to is the fact that the agreement that had been reached in private negotiations was that Dick Hall would be released unharmed. Dick Hall would walk out of Tony's wired apartment, wired to explosives, a free man. That didn't happen.
You broke your word, so there's no immunity, and come on, we'll get in the car and go downtown. But I really think that there was never any intention to give him immunity. The promises were made under duress.
Coming up, Kiritsis was arrested, booked, had his mugshot taken, everything he wanted to avoid. Now there was a matter of keeping him from hurting anyone else. You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
Tony, you it up. You brought that man out on a shotgun. Just settle down. We're here to help you. We'll help you, Tony. You f***ed it up, Tony. I talked to you, and we had our plan, right? You talk about a cheap shot. No, Tony, I talked to you on the phone, and I told you I was going to bring that man out, and you said okay. No, Tony, you told me you was going to lay that shotgun down up there facing the wall and bring him down without it. You talk about a cheap shot. Now, didn't you? You talk about a cheap shot.
February 8th, 1977. The Kiritsis crisis was over, essentially. Tony Kiritsis was under arrest after a press conference where he tried to force his hostage, Dick Hall, to read a statement about his own company, Meridian Mortgage. Ultimately, Tony Kiritsis read that statement, and afterward, even though he had been promised immunity from prosecution and arrest, he was put in handcuffs and taken away. Hostage Dick Hall says he doesn't know where the statement came from, and Kiritsis shoved it into his hands moments before the press conference started.
Well, I didn't prepare it. I hadn't had a chance to review it. It was just presented to me. I don't know where it was made up. But it was the statement was it was a lie.
Being a hostage with a shotgun at the back of his head, Hall says he didn't even know whether or not he'd be alive after that statement was through.
The recollection I had was that it felt good to be out of the apartment. I don't think I had any real expectations or what I was going to confront. But I did have the feeling that it was good to be out of that apartment.
You can see in the pictures the very glum and solemn look on the faces of the men who were standing behind Tony, including Fred.
Then WIBC reporter Tom Cochran.
I talked to Fred about this later, and we looked at the pictures and discussed this. And Fred and I were on a number of panels and discussion groups afterwards because of the nature of the story and all of that. Fred said that he was frightened that Tony was probably going to just go off the deep end after they had worked so hard and so long to try to negotiate an agreement. And so that's why Fred had that very somber look, as did most of the men in that lineup.
As Mark Watkins and I drove away from the Crestwood Village Thursday night, having just logged in 22 hours on the scene, we found words hard to come by. We just sat and drove and shared few comments. We both tried to remark that it seemed unreal. Not the storm of emotion we had just left, but the normalcy and tranquility of Indianapolis at night. Life had gone on, as it always does, but since we had left what had been called a death watch, it seemed the quiet was out of place, that perhaps we were lost in a culture warp. We agreed there were no words adequate for the feelings, no way to describe the emotions trapped on the faces of that room full of people, all of whom were virtual hostages, no way to gauge the depth of torment in the eyes of Tony Kiritsis. And what can you say about Jimmy, Tony's brother? Tears in his eyes, coming into our broadcast room, trying to convey thanks to people like Fred Heckman. What we are left with is a picture of Jimmy expressing his gratitude to Fred by a Greek kiss on the forehead. Pictures like that live forever in our minds. Tom Cochran, WIBC News.
The trial that was originally supposed to start in the summer of '77 was delayed because Kiritsis fired his lawyer. It got started and finished in October of 1977. Dick Hall says in his new book, Kiritsis and Me, that when he was put on the stand, he didn't want to be the one to say that Kiritsis was insane. So he didn't. He said it was up to other people to judge that.
This continued to have sort of an afterglow story. The one thing in the trial is the not guilty by reason of insanity was a defense that was on the books in those days. After Tony's trial, there were changes made in the Indiana legislature in determining the nature of the proof, proving insanity or proving guilt, and it changed things. Tony was found not guilty by reason of insanity, but sort of refused to submit to treatment or to even early on to diagnostic therapy.
And then Hall spoke publicly.
It's been a long ordeal. My family and I are extremely grateful to God for a safe solution in this ordeal. And we're most appreciative of all those thoughts and prayers that were with us. The consideration, the talent, and the cooperation of the various law enforcement agencies was outstanding, and we can't express enough our gratitude. The efforts of the news media to cooperate is also appreciated.
He described the isolation and desperation of his captivity.
The main connection I had was radio. Television was not always available. When one's in a situation such as this, I think that your mind is almost completely captivated by the thought of what am I going to do the next second.
Deputy Prosecutor George Mart suggested that Hall not answer many questions because of legal complexities. He agreed, stood, and walked out of the room to another burst of sustained applause. Doug O'Brien, WIBC News.
And essentially, it was the last time anyone would hear from Dick Hall in a public forum for almost 40 years, aside from one newspaper interview in 1978. He was asked the question, why talk now after 40 years? Why put out a book now after 40 years? And why go on the radio to talk about what happened during the Kiritsis crisis?
Well, I think, among other things, I'm 80 years old, and I figured that if I'm going to tell my story, I better do it. Nobody knows, and I've been, I think one of the main reasons is that one of my sons said, Dad, I don't want my kids to think of you as a wimp or I can't tell the story. And that made a big difference to me.
As for Tony Kiritsis, he was sent away, but not to prison. Tom Cochran explains why Kiritsis didn't totally disappear.
They couldn't just hold him in a penal system per se. He was really a state mental patient, but this was part of the story that then continued for months and months afterwards as Tony either refused to submit for examination or therapy and was being held. He continued to be outspoken, communicated with many journalists in the area about how it was unfair that he was being held against his will, he was not guilty, etc., etc. And this continued on and on.
Former WISH TV news director Lee Giles got phone calls from Kiritsis for years.
We would get intermittent contacts from Mr. Kiritsis. Occasionally there would be a letter, very roughly written letter, probably profanity-laced, but the most frequent contact I got as news director was sitting in my office, the phone would ring, and it'd be Tony Kiritsis on the phone calling me. And the first time it was kind of shocking. I certainly didn't expect it. I knew he had to be calling from prison. I wondered how he got permission to do so, etc. I didn't know if he was going around the system somehow or whatever. But anyway, the first call, I listened to him, and he got very profane and very agitated. And I said, Mr. Kiritsis, at that point, I'm not going to listen to that kind of language. I'm not going to, either you quit with that kind of language, I'm going to hang up on you. Well, he quit for a minute, and then he got back into the profane, and I hung up on him.
Law enforcement, Speedway police mostly, because that's where he was living, would say they'd see him all the time. He was pleasant. They all knew him. They weren't particularly keeping a watch on him or anything, but they say pleasant guy, had a bad experience. I don't think anybody in law enforcement had any anger or anything to him. I think they just wanted to solve it at the time, and so he served his time, moves into a small place, and he's good.
Though Dick Hall denies that Meridian Mortgage ever did anybody wrong intentionally, former WIBC reporter Paul Page says not everybody believed that.
He actually, I thought, all things given, was successful in putting much of his point of view across. A lot of people sympathized with him. I mean, here's a big deal mortgage operation and everything, and poor little Tony. And he became, I think, a folk hero.
I must say, in all fairness and honesty to Mr. Kiritsis, everything that Mr. Kiritsis has said or demanded from the Meridian Mortgage people is complete and an absolute fact.
Even though Tony Kiritsis told the media and everybody who would listen that he would be a national hero, he wasn't. He died in his home in 2005. He had spent 11 years in mental facilities in Indiana. Coming up, why Tony Kiritsis is still with us and how it impacts how you get your news every day. Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
You're listening to Dead Man's Wire, the Kiritsis Crisis on 93 WIBC.
It's an incredible story, sir.
You haven't heard anything, Fred.
If you were listening to WIBC Radio, February 8th through 10th, 1977, it was a voice that you couldn't avoid hearing.
I'm sorry I was cross last night, but man, you see, I happened to overhear that thing that you got, that's the other thing, that you guys played on WIBC about them putting this bomb mess together. Now, you guys forced me to tie the gun to this man again.
And the voice of Tony Kiritsis has stayed with a lot of people. In fact, an entire city.
Tony Kiritsis, in that particular day, that February day when it all began, was unknown to most of us. But until the day he died, Tony was continued to be at least a subtext in our lives.
Who can use Money Mover 24-hour teller from Indiana National Bank? Anyone who needs to do 24-hour banking.
We're on the phone right now with Diane Stone, our winner this hour of WIBC's Magic Ticket. Good evening, Diane.
Hi.
Have you any idea what you've won?
No, I don't.
You don't have the slightest, do you?
No.
It's 1 year's worth of gasoline from WIBC. How about that?
The rants that filled the airwaves on those 3 February days were nasty, profane, but also very compelling.
Everything that I hear from the word go, from your brothers, from the we've had a lot of your friends, Tony, fellows in the Army with you, fellows that work with you, right up and down the line, say, you're just one hell of a fine guy.
Have they really said that? Have they really said that?
Yes, they have, Tony. They really have.
It's been tough, Freddie.
People were getting updates on TV across the country and in Indianapolis on WIBC. No radio or TV broadcast like what happened on those 3 February days had ever happened before. Since then, 24-hour cable stations have routinely carried car chases, hostage situations, and other situations that have gone south right in front of viewers. For Lee Giles, then news director for WISH TV, the new experience had many anxieties.
I just wanted to fry the son of a bitch, but I had a rig, pal. Don't you
It's yourself not. I believe it.
In fact, it was one long, anxious moment, especially the news conference at the end.
He came out not the way he said he would. He came out with a gun still wired to Mr. Hall's head, and everybody was taken aback at this point, including the authorities and the police, as they told us later. So here we are in a very, very public, live, tense situation, and we were live. Now, at that point, it was okay. But when Mr. Kiritsis again went into his tirade and took the letter from Mr. Hall and started reading it and began talking very profanely, that was, of course, an immediate concern at that point. But let me tell you, as a news director and as a citizen, I was most concerned about the potential deadly conflicts of this. With that shotgun wired to a guy's head, anything could have happened. My greatest concern and fear, to tell you the truth, as a news director while this was going live, was not about the profanity at the moment. The serious question was life or death. I did not think that Mr. Kiritsis, after all this time, would intentionally pull that trigger. But who knew?
For radio, it was different. WIBC had been with the story since the very beginning, since Kiritsis started his mad rant down Washington Street, and all the way through the phone calls with Fred Heckman that went on the air.
But I'm a mean mother. They aren't going to intimidate me, and they aren't going to humiliate me.
WIBC reporter at the time, Paul Page. And probably some would argue that it helped save Dick Hall's life. What do you think from your perspective?
That argument is perfectly valid, and I have no problem at all with what was done because it helped make the whole thing succeed. But I guess that particular role with its immediate feedback was what they were looking for. So yes, it saved his life. I mean, a number of things probably contributed to the good outcome.
That was then. This is now, 2017. What would WIBC Radio do now if there were a Kiritsis crisis today? A conversation with Matt Hiblin, the executive producer of WIBC, and David Wood, the program director. They're in charge of everything that goes on the air. And they, along with the news team, would make the decision about what goes live.
Several years ago when we were doing afternoons, there was a robbery at a gas station, and the criminal went into the gas station and held somebody hostage in the gas station. And we heard about it through the police scanners, so the then news director, Lee DeNoon, called the gas station to see what was going on, and the guy answered. The guy that was holding people hostage answered. So she did a quick interview with him and had been running tape and recorded it, and so we cut it up and we aired it in the next newscast, and the police were not happy. The police got a hold of us and they were furious and asked us never to do that kind of thing again and chastised the news director, and that created a little bit of a conflict from the program director and the police chief at the time, back and forth about what the responsibility was, and we ended up agreeing that we would not do that again, but we felt justified in airing it when we did.
I think those conflicts are going to exist, though, and it's just because we have a different responsibility than the police. We have a responsibility to bring news to people, and people have the right to know. David Wood, program director for WIBC, I mean, if this happened again, a very similar situation, if a madman was parading a man down Washington Street with a gun to the back of his head, yelling and cursing, would this be something that WIBC would cut to live?
Yeah, I think that you have to, and it's interesting. What would be live now too? It's would it be Facebook Live? Would you live tweet it? Probably all of the above. I mean, being a kid when that all happened and watching it, on television, I mean, it was unprecedented, then, but you see a lot of stuff, now that you wouldn't before, just because there's so much more capability. Anybody can take the video, anybody can post the video, so I don't see how you don't.
But if something happened, do you dump out of the delay at that point and cut off the feed so that it isn't heard over the air, or do you let it all play out as it's happening no matter what?
I think that once you realize what's happening, the FCC will allow, what they call, incidental utterances of profanity. I think there might come a point where it's like you're going, okay, we're going to stop this, for right now, or you apologize for it, like they did back in '77. But I think that you're prepared to to dump. I think it depends on what is there then to bring to the story.
And what about TV today? Lee Giles.
What I would have done today, or we would have done then if we had the capabilities, we would have had our reporter take over the narration, and we would not have had Mr. Kiritsis live with all those profanities. We would just describe the situation and what was going on, and we would have got those profanities off the air. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So the first time in the history that I can imagine, maybe since then, that kind of language actually got on the air. But again, it was a life or death situation.
Someone who knows something about life and death, hostage Dick Hall.
The more that time goes by, it changed my life. I had a direction. I suppose you'd think I had goals. Almost any aspect, I would say, to my life, I guess the expression goes, it was just thrown upside down.
And WIBC News Director Fred Heckman took the experience with him for the rest of his life, too.
And I was thinking of his wife and 4 children, too. But I thought that I perhaps could save Hall's life. That's the reason that I played this first 20 minutes, complete with all the profanity of every word that anybody has ever used, perhaps down over the centuries.
Paul Page.
I walked back in the building when it was all over, and I looked at Fred. He looked at me, and I shook my head, and he was like, I'm the news director. So in this day and age, I don't think anybody think twice about it. But that was really a first for a lot of us.
Tom Cochran.
Realizing that everything that he had done in his life to that point was to be a broadcaster. Now he has sort of stepped out of that role exclusively, and he's involved in this very fine negotiation where a man's life hung in the balance.
Tears, fear, bewilderment, hostility. The nervous tension was thick. Cameras whirred, lights glared, the room sweated. No screenplay could ever be as dramatic. No actors could ever capture the emotion of these participants in a truly incredible media event. This is Tom Cochran, WIBC News.
You've been listening to Dead Man's Wire, The Kiritsis Crisis, on 93 WIBC. Written and produced by Chris Davis. Archivist, Ashley Fowler. Interviews by Chris Davis and C.J. Miller. Special thanks to Sean Matthews, Scott Watson, Tom Cochran, Paul Page, and very special thanks to Dick Hall.
Dick, what'd I tell you? I stuck one of these in your ear for 3 days, and you had one in mine for 4.5 years.